there's a little bit of evidence-based neurology, a little bit of, neuroanatomy, something on the surface to kind of polish it and make it look like, yes, this is legitimate. But when you look at the details of what is given out for patients as a false hope for reversing Alzheimer's disease, that hasn't been proven as of yet.
Yeah. They create a facade, they create a language, and then there's a linguistic gymnastics done where this language, which has just superficial linguistic proximity, is connected with another thing, which has nothing, no relation, but just linguistic.
Right.
And then all of a sudden this became the product.
The thing that you can't live without.
Neurodegeneration does not arise with the first sign of memory problems. It's a condition that continues for 20, sometimes even 30 years, slowly and gradually causing damage to the brain until the point where they have their first memory problems. And then they continue to decline.
What's something that I can do today, would you say?
It's not about what to do. It's about what not to do.
Welcome to the Better Brain Podcast, where we talk about all things brain health for anyone who has a brain or knows somebody who does and wants to make it better.
Today's guests are doctors Ayesha and Dean Sherzai. They're neurologists, better known as the Brain Docs on social media, and they are bringing brain health topics and helping to prevent dementia for people in our local and general populations.
They have a humongous history in this work and are very inspirational, but also genuine, down to earth. And we covered things like some of the scams that are out there, protocols that are overblown and non-evidence based. And so I think this episode is extremely revealing, high yield. Tune in.
All right, let's go. What do you think about all this protocolization of brain performance to prevent dementia and this whole
Do
thing
we need to
going?
name the person?
We'll get into
it. Go ahead.
I think it's dangerous because I think one of the most important things we have to do in today's environment is, as rapid as it's moving, as a society, we have to become aware of two things: how to look at data and how to become comfortable with uncertainty. As Dr. Cummings from here, when he interviewed me to bring me here, he said, the most important thing that has moved humanity is the civilizing influence of doubt. I love that. It's okay to not know. You don't have to extrapolate to perfection. You don't have to, sometimes we don't know. And sometimes soft data that points in a given direction should be said. A lot of times you say 90% of Alzheimer's can be prevented. And then they take just that part. I said, I don't have data for that. I only have data, soft data, for 60% maybe. But we think that the way that lifestyle has been done, there's evidence that you could do better. And the genetics say that APP, presenil-1, presenil-2 is altogether 3 to 4%, and so on and so forth. But that's extrapolation. And I go out of our way. We go out of our way to say, this is extrapolation. This is extrapolation. Don't even take it seriously.
The problem is that talk is so boring, right? When you start to paint the gray and you start to talk about all the details and get into the weeds, it's boring. What everybody wants is a white coat that says something with authority, with definitiveness, and it's absolutely clear that this regimen, this blood test, this whatever
When we start this talk like that, I'll tell you 10 things that will save your life. And then we kind of disentangle it. Yeah.
No, it's absolutely true. I think by giving people very rigid lists to follow, we lose the nuance and that personalization aspect of it.
Exactly.
We actually lose such a huge opportunity for people to adhere to something that is important for them. And you're absolutely right. Most of the commentary about brain health that we hear in social media comes from just this immense confidence that is portrayed in an individual, which is not bad. I love confidence, but when it comes to people's lives and their health and their decision making every single day, that's not appropriate.
It leads to the shaming that we grew up with all these magazines of these good-looking people. You feel bad if you're not following a protocol to the T, if you're not able to afford it or just maintain it. Who can do a ketogenic diet for months or years?
Absolutely.
Right? Who can do these protocols that are so extreme?
It's borderline unethical, to be honest with you, because broadcasting a particular protocol to a community or to a set of individuals and not knowing the nuance of who they are, whether whether they have access to these resources, essentially brings so much depression and feeling of shame and guilt. And we see that in our clinics. It's like, oh, I can't do it, therefore I'm not going to even try or look at it anymore. And so you see people adhering to unhealthy lifestyle because of that.
Okay, let me be devil's advocate. Is there an element of protocolizing certain things that people can do that don't necessarily cost anything? You hear about sunlight in the morning, for example, or this or that. Certainly, there's not black and white, this issue, right?
So here's my protocol. It's a $10,000 protocol. It's incredibly powerful. I think they can make a movie about it. You wake up early in the morning, same time every morning, as our friend from Duke University, Sleep, said. Sleep comes down to one thing, not even sleeping the same time every night. Wake up every morning, same time. Right. A 25-minute brisk walk, a good breakfast that is, carbs and protein, and it's healthy, not super processed. And then basically making sure that you keep your brain active throughout the day around your passions. That's my protocol. That's powerful because it involves all the aspects that have been shown. So the reason that creating protocols ad nauseum is bad because it drowns the right protocols with noise to the extent that we give up on the real protocols. The real protocols are very simple. We can talk about that in a second.
Well, it also takes agency, creativity, and intuition out of it for an individual who themselves might get a gut feeling or a sense that their cognition is changing or that something makes them feel good. It takes that out of their hands and puts it in this, hyperbolic kind of influencer's hands, and then they feel bad about it.
And that's one thing that this new regimen does is experts are not experts, so you get rid of a bunch of opposition. You don't say that I'm the expert to listen to, but by extension, because everybody else is eliminated, it creates a vacuum that's filled by the thing in front of you. And then you do X, Y, and Z, and it's even worse. The third level is worse, where the X, Y, and Z are vitamin concoctions. And we know a lot of doctors that they said there are holes, these 31 holes or whatever number of holes, and they do a 50-panel blood test.
Right.
So when in science, we know about the bell curve. If you test a population for, let's say, potassium level, normal population, no pathology, but their numbers will fall on a bell curve where about, one standard deviation or about 10% are going to be below what appears to be normal. And 1% will be above what appears to be normal. So that means that these two are abnormal? No, for this population, for general population, this is normal distribution. But if you do 50 of those, every single person will have a number that will fall outside. And then they say, oh, there.
So I think that's where the heart of this all lies, is finding that objective marker that is ambiguous enough.
Yes.
It is possible to have a false positive.
Yes.
That then a treatment that costs something can be administered to target specifically for that person where that one problem or abnormal test explains everything they've been through.
Exactly.
And it requires some snake oil salesmanship.
Oof.
It requires some cold reading of the person and their issues. And I think we'll get into all that, but let's do it in the context of this New York Times article.
Yes.
Where
you guys read this?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we sent it to you guys immediately and said, hey, let's have this podcast around this topic because it's hurtful. It's damaging to neurologists and to the trust in what is standard, potentially boring medical tests, workups, and things like that, but that actually have value. Whereas this holds maybe too much hope, one would say. And the article was all about that. An expensive Alzheimer's lifestyle plan offers false hope, experts say. And the writer actually interviewed a few different people, including this woman here, about the Dale Bredesen protocol. What is your take off the cuff on this article?
I think I'm really glad that they actually spoke to patients and individuals who were experiencing the devastation of Alzheimer's disease and the fear, the loss of hope, and the details of what it feels like to be in this. I really love that idea for people to come to surface to say to show them like this is what what it looks like.
Yeah.
Obviously, as far as Dr. Bredesen is concerned, I mean, we've spoken about him in the past as well. I've read both of his books, and I've actually seen a lot of his patients. And in the clinic, we had a sign. We used to call it the plastic bag sign. So anybody coming in with a huge plastic bag and a lot of bottles in them, that was from the Bredesen clinic, because the number of supplements that were given to them were just astonishing. And no disrespect to him, and I'm not sure if he means well, but most of the things that are stated there are just outside of what is accepted as guideline-directed therapies. And I see this trend where there's a little bit of evidence-based neurology, a little bit of, neuroanatomy, something on the surface to kind of polish it and make it look like, yes, this is legitimate. But when you look at the details of what is given out for patients as a false hope for reversing Alzheimer's disease, that hasn't been proven as of yet.
No, I think it's even trickier than that, because the salesmanship here is mixed technical jargon where you can almost not follow what he's saying, even as a physician and scientist myself, where he's talking about the configuration of phosphorylated tau and things like that, to suddenly using more lay and more general and simplified language about how good something could be. And you wouldn't even believe it if I told you how many people actually had babesiosis or some other tick-borne illness that was causing their issue. And so you immediately build trust for this authority because of the language he uses, and then on the back end of a statement he can push a thing that you wouldn't even believe, and you feel now part of this exclusive group where the information is available right here, right now, that you can take action on if you lay down $1,000 a month or two to get the supplements in this big screener test.
Right.
You said it so beautifully. There's a sleight of hand. It's a beautiful sleight of hand, to be honest. You create trust, you create a facade, and without people knowing, I'm also very hopeful. In a second, I'll tell you the hope. I really think that the human evolution is not a physical one. It's us becoming more complex with regards to language. Consciousness is language. There's a great book, Consciousness and the Bicameral Mind. It's about humanity just getting more and more complex language, and we're beginning to understand that. In my family gathering, all of a sudden, even though we have different beliefs, somebody jumps in and says, "Oh, that's a logical fallacy." I'm like, "Yes, that's a win. I don't care if we don't agree." That's a win. So people are beginning to recognize these
where's
terms.
your critical thinking?
Yes. So I love that. So people are becoming aware of this. These old techniques still works. It still works for a lot of people, but people are becoming aware that there's a sleight of hand. Anything that sounds too good to believe, you should be incredulous. And this is what it is. You said it perfectly. They create a facade, they create a language, and then there's a linguistic gymnastics done where this language, which has just superficial linguistic proximity, is connected with another thing, which has nothing, no relation, but just linguistic.
Right.
And then all of a sudden this became the product.
The thing that you can't live without.
Exactly.
Right.
And you have to pay $1,000.
And like you mentioned, it starts off with truth, right? There's always a kernel of truth. And I don't think that we necessarily just see this in this specific topic, but you see it across the board, whether that's politics or any other topic, right? Where there's just like sleight of hand, where there starts with a kernel of truth, and the next thing you know, there's like all these conspiracy theories about different things, right?
It comes down to integrity issue. I don't know if it was Bruce Miller or some other, there was an article many years ago, and they basically just compartmentalized this kind of conversation and called it neurobabble. So you hear a lot of neurobabble about brain health out in social media, and being in social media and having the privilege of working with patients on a regular basis, it's really difficult for someone who's not in the scientific world to be able to say, like, okay, let me just go ahead and PubMed this thing and see how valid it is, right? If you have an MD and a PhD next to your name, if you say so, I will accept it. And it's so bad that it actually goes down to this rabbit hole of pseudoscience and false data.
Well, and the breadth that individuals like Dr. Bredesen, or I don't know if he's got a license or not. The article says that it's gone, but the breadth of knowledge that he comes with across all of the different realms of human behavior and lifestyle and risk factors, from dietary things, using each time along the way something I've never even heard about, a soap I've never heard about, or some test for some dietary thing, or a heavy metal or something like that I've never heard about. as someone who speaks to patients all the time, as a neurologist, as a neuroscientist, it makes me think, man, this guy must know something.
Yes.
And he does, of course, right? He's a smart man, and as you said, maybe he is well-meaning, and there is a ton of repackaged good stuff that he has in his book and in his protocol, mixed with the less truthful kernels.
Yeah.
I mean, people who sold things, and we all do this to some extent. I'm saying this so that we kind of make it less personal, and I'm hoping that I'm ascribing goodwill to him and others. Dr. Amons and all of those at different levels. Dr. Amons does some really good work as well, and others. Is that people can change, and it's a choice. Just and change the direction, and the other part of this just become a little more ourselves. We've changed our mind. We've noticed that, like this 90% is still killing me. We wrote in the first book that 90% of Alzheimer's can be prevented. Even though we made the statement that it's extrapolate, I still have nightmares about that.
Yeah.
Because
I get like a pain right here in my chest.
More than,
Like, I wish we hadn't said that. Yeah.
But you can learn. You can pull back. You can help people with their journey. And I think even with the scientists, we can help each other become better, but we can't acquiesce.
Yeah.
We can't acquiesce. We can't give up this battle of how to look at data. I mean, look at it around you, whether it's politics, economics, or these incredible podcasters who are billionaires on TV. It's how people play with data and numbers and how they play with interpretation of those to move masses. And the opportunities, that's where the opportunity is. If every conversation we have, it's not just about neuroscience, but about how to look at data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, what I would love our audience to understand is what exploitation looks like when it comes from an authority who, is coming from a data perspective, an evidence-based perspective for something that he or she is selling.
Absolutely.
I think that's a skill that needs to be learned, especially now with AI, which makes it much foggier what is true and what is not.
Yeah.
So
One of the things we say is we just gave a talk at ACLM and we said abandon icons. Including us. And there are no icons.
No.
There's only, and even if somebody has all the credentials, doesn't matter. What comes out of their mouth and the weight of that factor and how they're actually communicating, that's the only thing that matters. That's it. And if we and how freeing is that? That's because now
it's in your hands.
It's in your
as
hands.
the listener.
Yeah, and it's not that hard. I mean, I really think for people to see the data and how to look at the data and look at, you don't have to look at p-values and confidence intervals and all of that, but look at this is a pretty robust study. And we even say if it's a randomized clinical trial of 2,000, it's not enough because it has to be repeated. It has to be repeated a couple of times. It has to be shown in other ways as well. And then a bunch of experts, yes, there is such a thing as expertise, come together and look at that data and say, as a collective, we think that this points to this direction. And even then, we say, for the rest of the time, we're looking at what parts of it needs to be fine-tuned.
Yeah, I love what you guys did with Saffron, right? Where you pointed out the publication bias, right?
Yes.
And a lot of other issues relating to reproducibility of Saffron specifically for depression, right?
Yeah.
I think it came out of Iran.
Yes.
Right? I'm half
Most of the
Iranian.
studies-
Yes.
I was very biased and hopeful
Yeah.
for
I know.
Saffron. We know how important Saffron is
It
to
is.
Persians,
It is.
so...
We love saffron.
Yeah,
I mean,
great.
it's a fantastic.
Delicious.
It's delicious.
Delicious.
It's probably there's some good to it, but if you put too much weight on that, then you give up on things like greens, walking.
I was just gonna say,
Building muscle.
Yeah, building
big,
muscle.
there's big rocks, and then there's tiny little increments.
But the tiny rock is shiny and it's interesting
Right,
and
right,
it's
right.
like or ashwagandha or
Yes.
Well, it's the silver bullet
Yes,
effect,
the
right?
silver
It is
bullet,
this thing that you need that will change your life.
exactly.
I really liked because we were talking about this really before this episode recording, and you mentioned the penny in the road.
Yeah.
Do you mind mentioning that again for me?
So I think a framework to judge recommendations is important for anybody to have, and I try to relay this to my patients. Peter Attia kind of said it on one of his podcasts, and so I'll borrow it for a minute. But to weigh, let's say, a supplement's cost benefit, you see this, money in the middle of the street, and you decide whether the benefit outweighs the cost of walking out to the middle of the street. So you walk out there, you find it's a penny, and do you stand there and pick it up or not? Depends on what's coming down the street at you. If it's a little girl riding a tricycle, pick that penny up and run, right?
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
But if it's a Mack truck, you're getting out of the road,
Yeah.
right? And you don't pick the penny up. But if it's $1 million, what do you do?
Yeah.
And so this is the cost benefit that everyone should be doing about every piece of evidence or recommendation or prescription that they get is what's the cost benefit here, you know? And it's hard to know that with limited ability to look up the research and distill the findings and stuff.
Yeah.
But you've got to, you know, work with your doctor, ask them lots of questions, be skeptical, and think about what are the big rocks, the $1 million things that are actually going to benefit you.
Yeah.
That there's a little girl driving a tricycle. There's not really
You push her off if it's $1 million.
exercise. I mean, that's one where there's not even anyone coming down the road.
Yeah.
There's another side to that as well. So yes, the big rocks are important, and people who are pushing the smaller rocks, just to kind of use that same analogy. From my conversations with some of my patients and community members, they're like, well, what's the loss, right? I am doing the big rocks. It's okay if I go ahead and add the small rocks. It's not going to hurt me. And that could be some supplements and vitamins and some of the things that they have to purchase to include. Like, what's the bad thing about it if I'm taking care of the big rocks? There is. So there's promotion of concepts that are essentially abusing a particular situation, right? When you are fear-mongering and you're taking advantage of someone who is so vulnerable, and I'm including the families of dementia patients in it. You guys have seen how terrifying
Nobody
that
wants
is,
it more
right?
than them.
Right. So you're basically taking the patient as well as their daughters and their sons and their loved ones who are concerned about getting it as well, and you're just collectively adding them into this bandwagon of like, yes, do all of these extra things. It's okay if the evidence is not very strong about it at all. This could potentially delay early detection. This could potentially delay interventions later on. And it could completely, negate people from sticking to evidence-based science. I see it as a huge problem.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I
distracting.
say.
It is.
But again, that certainty of saying, well, I know what I'm talking about and you just do it. And they're like, yeah, just tell me what I have to do and I will do it. I see a lot of that. And people should just be okay with, probabilities and possibilities and mays and mights instead of yes and no and black and white. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Why don't you bring up the Bredesen chart?
That's next. I definitely want to hit that because it's in response really to this. So in 2020, there was a Lancet article written by Dr. Helmuth who was questioning this book. Is this damaging? Is the end of Alzheimer's, Bredesen's book, is it damaging? Is it dangerous? And she brings up the fact that there was 3 studies that most of the evidence in the book was based on, and these studies were case series. And most of the outcomes of following the protocol were subjective cognitive outcomes as opposed to objective markers or imaging or blood work or what have you. And because there was no control group, there's a big risk for a placebo effect. And so I think, devil's advocate, placebo effect's good, right? I mean, it's a strong effect. Why? So what if it doesn't cost that much, or if it doesn't harm me and there's no adverse effects? Why shouldn't I embrace having some benefit from this protocol, even if it's just subjective, or even if the placebo effect is in play?
I think the problem was bigger. We'll talk to the placebo effect and its problem because if you open up the door to placebo effect, you open up the door for all the things that can potentially have a placebo effect, which is basically everything. Because it's not in the thing, it's in the belief of the person to the thing. Which means that if the salesman is good enough, they can sell you eating. One of the aphorisms or historical things I heard was that historically some of the medications that were given, I'm not going to call it where it was from, but was these. So the person that, let's say 1,000 years ago, they would go to this healer. Yep. They would go to this healer, and then they're sick. So the healer would give them something, right? So you're going to a person you trust. Yep. You're going there, and then they have this healer, and of course they have these things,
crystals
in their home,
and potions,
the robes, and just the
Mesmer.
whole look.
Mesmer, yes. And then they give you something, and then you go home and you feel different. You feel weird.
Yep.
You feel weird. Oh, so this good person who has power has given me something that made me feel different. And so therefore I must feel better. What they found that a lot of times these people would either put opium or they would put some other kind of toxin. And some would even put mercury. So just because you felt different doesn't mean the outcome is different. And people can make you believe anything if you believe in them. So the problem with placebo is the fact that it's not reality. It's your belief. And if your belief is the propagator of what should be taken for healthcare, we're lost. So it's critical that we address that. The second problem is that for something like Bredeson's protocol or others, where it's not overseen, it's not a well-done clinical trial where the cases and controls are well understood. IRB is overseeing it, making sure that there's no confound. It's large enough where the N, where we know that the confounds are not being compromised. They're not being given information. There's a study that just came out that we know behind the scene that they were saying that Alzheimer's was reversed, but we know that people were repeat tested. And especially with memory, if you repeat a test, what happens?
Right, you get better at it.
You get better at it. Yet they were announced everywhere. So the nature of the study matters, because it's not like scientists or doctors or salespeople are not nefarious. There is a lot of bad studies out there because there was investment and people needed ends. They needed p-values. They needed results because there was a $5 million grant or $10 million or money to be made. That's why it has to be overseen. When a study is self-made in your backyard and it's only 100 people or 10 people in that first study, there's no reliability.
I mean, even if everything was IRB approved and it was a small study and all this other stuff, what you do with a case series is you generate hypotheses and then you run clinical trials where you have a placebo
It's
control.
the first step. Actually, the second step. Case study, then case series. I've done this. And so you have multiple steps before you say, I have slight confidence that we should apply this to population. Like dozens of steps left. But
So I want to just dub it down a little bit in regards to what Bredesen is doing. So he's putting out statements regarding his protocol can reverse Alzheimer's dementia, and that is based off of studies that he's done previously. Those studies are case series studies. Right? What is the problem with a case series study? I know you just covered it, but just directly, what is the issue with a case series study? And making a conclusion like that,
So case series essentially means, for our lovely listeners, that you're basically looking at a bunch of people and you're applying an intervention and see how they do. Whatever tests you do, whatever kind of outcomes you're looking for, you're just looking at a particular set of individuals. In science, and especially when you are creating an intervention to say that this works for this disease and it will make you feel better, you have to have a comparison group. You have to have a similar set of people, same age groups, and they do statistics to make sure that their mean age is the same thing, their education levels are the same thing. And they also have to make sure that they measure for their confounding risk factors, whether that's vascular risk factors like blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, exposure to environments. So essentially, you have to do a lot to make sure that the two groups that you're comparing are similar. And then you check and measure how the intervention in one set of population affects them and how is it compared to the other population who are not exposed to that intervention. And you do it for a long enough time where it's meaningful. And you and I know that for brain health, that is a very long time. To see change in brain health, it takes a longer period of time. In Bredeson's protocol, we don't have that. We don't have any comparison, and it's not large enough and not long enough for it to be convincing at this point. So that's what it means.
So that not having the control group opens up the possibility of a placebo effect, right?
As one of the things.
One of the things. And to Kevin's point earlier, well, if it's going to improve my cognition through the placebo effect, what does it matter, right? Is the point that he made before. what is the issue with a placebo effect in relation to reversing the disease, in relation to its duration of effect?
The placebo effect itself is not going to affect that. The placebo effect is going to affect the validity of that thing. Validity means validity by science is this thing truly measuring what it's intending to measure, right? It's not. It's a placebo effect is not measuring the true effect of the intervention on the outcome. That's it. And that's important because if you apply it to the general population, will it do the same thing? Because it's not useful if it's not applied to general population, and it's not. And that's the thing. The other part of this is that in these populations, if you involve, for example, in dementia, if you don't have a very, and we have patients, I've seen 20,000 patients. If you don't have a good way of somebody else is overseeing it, and if somebody has not good intention, it's easy to come up with outcomes even. People coming out with saying that I was able to reverse dementia. They can't say they've reversed Alzheimer's, they can say dementia. Remember, dementia is the umbrella category. Alzheimer's is a subtype of dementia. And dementia is a hodgepodge of lots of stuff. Dementia, you can have dementia from depression.
So let's talk about that for a second. So we had an episode where we talked about the reversibles and irreversibles.
We listened to that. Yes,
so
yes.
The idea is that when you have a dementia, that is just a clinical diagnosis. That means you have two or more cognitive domains, memory and language, or visuospatial and motor, or balance and something like that, that is down from where it was, is declining in some way, and that affects you in daily life. That's what you call dementia. Could be caused from reversible things like vitamin deficiencies or active infections or systemic illnesses, metabolic and neuroenergetic things, or depression, PTSD, or anxiety. These things that cause energy mismatches or other problems with brain function. And when you treat those things themselves, the dementia could reverse. You could no longer have that clinical diagnosis anymore because you've treated the cause of it.
Yes.
And so that is dementia, not caused by Alzheimer's, not caused by dementia with Lewy bodies or one of these other neurodegenerative phenomena that are not currently reversible.
No.
And so in his book, The End of Alzheimer's, and in the 3 studies, a lot of the interventions are going to reverse vitamin deficiencies or reverse, lack of movement or sleep apnea or some type of effect of metabolic risks on brain function.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
He's reversed things, and that's great.
And often depression.
Right?
Yeah. Often depression.
And he's given hope and confidence, and that is actually part of how we should treat every single person.
Very true.
Do we know the rate of irreversible versus reversible dementias within the umbrella term of dementia?
Not really.
There's a no.
Not really. We know that roughly 60% of all dementias, 60 to 70% of all dementias, depending on series, is Alzheimer's. And then now the rate of vascular dementia is changing because now we know that the vascular contribution is a lot more, it's 20% or so. And then frontotemporal lobe dementia, Lewy body dementia, and then you have the Parkinsonian dementia, and then you have Huntington's dementia, which is very small. The reversible types are... The reason it's difficult to identify them is because in good settings, in good universities, they are immediately diagnosed as depression. Right? In other settings, when we did with lots of papers on NIS and nationwide in-service, there's 8 million patients, and you get diagnoses. There's a lot of those kind of diagnoses in there. So we really don't have good data on that. I mean, good data. So we don't know. And that's why making sure that these kind of studies are done in a place where that's taken into consideration. They look at their genetics. They look at the amyloid and tau. They look at the imaging. They look at neuropsychological testing, where ironically and fortuitously, the neuropsychological testing can be so much more specific than even imaging sometimes. The disproportionality of short-term memory to long-term memory, along with visuospatial, is a great marker of Alzheimer's, potential Alzheimer's. Add to that amyloid, add to that imaging findings, then you know. But a lot of times these studies are not going to do that.
And so in these case series, and particularly these ones, you really need to define that population that you're studying so you understand what it is you're reversing.
Exactly.
And then what outcomes did you use? You said neurocognitive testing or subjective cognitive improvements. at least explain it and write out the methods. Did everyone get the same one? Yes. And did everyone have the same improvements in the same measure, or was it across the board? Some people improved in some areas, others improved in other areas. Did they actually get worse in any ways?
Yeah.
And so the article in The Lancet described that there's a lot of heterogeneity and variability in the way that all of that is described, a lot of ambiguity.
Yeah.
And so if you can't follow that as a physician, as a patient, you can't follow a study that has all of that variability in it and lack of clarity.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think it's really important for us to mention this right now because you have a lot of listeners who are not in the realm of neuroscience and neurology. Mm-hmm. It is not difficult to differentiate between an Alzheimer's patient and someone who has dementia related to reversible situations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is not difficult. We're all trained to get a very good history, do a neurological examination. History is everything. As a neurologist, you ask them the patterns of how their memory has changed over years. And then we do imaging with, volumetrics MRI. You look at the frontal lobe and the temporal lobes and the parietal lobes to see if there's any volume loss. And then with all of this together, along with memory testing, you can detect who has Alzheimer's disease or who has a condition that could potentially lead to cognitive decline. It's not difficult. Mm-hmm. And in these kind of situations where it's just like they put a stamp of dementia on it, right. That's not right. And that's where the problem is. Yeah. You just basically sweep a whole lot of people who have cognitive impairment, and then if they get better, not knowing whether it's related to neurodegeneration, which is very important to say that neurodegeneration does not arise with the first sign of memory problems. It's a condition that continues for 20, sometimes even 30 years, slowly and gradually causing damage to the brain until the point where they have their first memory problems, and then they continue to decline. So it's really important for people to know that, it's not difficult to differentiate between them.
And even when you look at, depression as a contributing factor to reversible dementia, and you think about the placebo effect, specifically in studies that have looked at, SSRIs or any other intervention for depression, the placebo effect is substantial when it comes to improving depression.
Yeah.
I think the other issue with the placebo effect is that it provides maybe a transient effect that is locked to the belief in the person and or the thing.
Yes, that's good.
And so when the person and or thing is no longer in your life, then the effect couldn't possibly continue to last. And so you're setting people up for a big drop off the cliff.
And how often do you see that with your patients coming from Bredesen or from somebody else where it was like, I did see some benefits, but then, it was short-lived, or now that I'm not following up, or now that I don't have the money to pay for it.
The reason they're in my clinic is because of all of that. Right? So it's 100%.
I've inherited a few myself.
Yeah.
And here's the bad part. I mean, there's a psychology behind this that's been worked out for thousands of years. Right. So when somebody invests, they're even more beholden to maintain that belief, even past the point of return.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Sunk cost fallacy, yes. So now I've put $20,000 here. I'm going to look foolish. And I had that belief system anyway. So I actually now, if I turn now, I'm going to look foolish. I'm just going to just a cost.
And it's not necessarily conscious, right? It's what the brain will do in order to preserve and protect itself.
These are all such wonderful people just wanting to do everything and anything they can get their hands on to take care of their loved ones. And the pain that they're experiencing is devastating. My heart goes out to all of them. And it's just really sad that they're exposed to false information.
So let's look at a little bit of the protocol where the cost is very high. And so this is the I don't know if it's a Mack truck cost, but it's something that's bigger than a tricycle coming down the road as you're trying to reach out there.
And apparently tricycles
to grab this thing, to grab this potential supplement or treatment or benefit, it's going to take 32 supplements.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the husband tried to figure out how to make this more palatable. He started to put food coloring in the shake that she was drinking. Tried to blend the pills so that it didn't have to be so burdensome. And they spent $25,000 in 8 months. And if you look across the web and try to understand how much could this cost for a patient, you'll find other clinics that are actually laying out the costs of entering a certified Bredesen protocol or recode protocol. And it adds up to about $20,000, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a year. And, some people would say, listen, and actually the husband of this patient said, it was worth it. I wanted to do everything I could to know that there was nothing left to do. And so I'd spend that again.
Yeah.
That's an important point.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah. I mean, that's the sunk cost, right?
right.
It's just filling the language afterwards,
Right.
and we do that. And I don't blame them. It's not a matter of blame. It's but for the rest of us, I think the most important thing. I love this that you're doing this. The most important thing, the most important job of 2025 is to better elucidate the language that's necessary to traverse the world today. And make sure that everybody is independent of icons. They're not being run by icons. They're becoming more familiar with data. They're becoming familiar with uncertainty. Those three things I think are very important, because and even something like some of these are really soft. You picked on placebo. You're right. It's tough to explain it away that okay, it's good enough. But we have to, because in the general population, it has consequences. For that person, they would say something like this gentleman said, it was worth it. But in reality, in the general population, it's noise, it's loss of clarity, it's loss of money, it's loss of opportunity. In the communities we work in, African-American communities, there are many things that need to be addressed, or other communities. Many things that have to be addressed in order to get to the point of contact where you make a difference, because of loss of trust and other things that have been done in the past, Tuskegee and otherwise. And we need to understand that that's in different ways true for all communities. So I'm not trying to separate communities. I'm bringing that community. But in this community, what we find is that the rate of colon cancer is less in that community, let's say, or certain other cancers. But mortality is higher. Because because they're incredulous, they're uncertain, they're scared. By the time they get to the doctor, it's stage 4. It's too late. All communities have something like that. But what delays that progression to the real treatment at the population level is noise. This is noise.
Yeah.
This is noise in the machine that every one of us have to become familiar with and fight, because once you get rid of the noise, then trust comes to the surface. Trust, I'm going to use a very dangerous word nowadays, authority. I did a whole fellowship 2 years in movement disorders at NIH. Another fellowship I did in UCSD and dementia, and movement disorders. That was 2000. I would not consider myself an authority in movement disorders now. And that's a subfield of neurology that I'm still involved with.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't consider myself
Calling out what you don't know just doesn't happen anymore.
No. Yeah.
Because anybody can look it up on ChatGPT or whatever it is and be an expert in a second.
And I'm an expert, without context.
Right.
Without the personal context. And so once we actually become aware of the noise and push back on the noise and let proper data, maybe in the future ChatGPT will be the proper data. I'm okay with that.
Right, yep.
As long as there's a systematic way of approaching that, then I think, but in the meantime, you said 25,000. We had some lady, $45,000.
Oh, I have a list of people.
Yeah.
I have a list of people that I know that went through this.
This seems to me, I'm young in my career, but this seems to me like a fairly recent phenomenon, right? These sort of alternative treatments to this degree.
No.
It's been around forever.
It's historic. In fact, in the past, it was all alternative
Snake
treatment.
oil. I mean, people have been selling some type of SU.
They just have better clothes
the
and
noise
shinier clinics.
The noise to this
More knowledge.
level, would you say it's probably the same that it's always been? Or has this been maybe a recent phenomenon that has gotten
I'm
to
going to
this
give you some hope. I think it's less. Yeah. So in the past, we were not aware of data. Most people were uneducated. When somebody like Hobbes or Hume or Descartes or somebody wrote something, it was lucky for Jefferson to read it and put it into, Montesquieu put it into. Most population didn't have that, right? So we were at superstition, at somebody saying that look at this thing, and then the stories. So it was very common. I think now we're much more savvy. We hear the noise. A lot of people fall for the noise, but I think the ratio of people that don't is actually better. So my sense of urgency is not because the numbers are getting worse. My sense of urgency is that with the noise-making machine potential, which is AI, that could get worse in that sense. But I think that I'm very optimistic as far as language of humanity becoming more and more sophisticated and people becoming more aware, people pushing back on. I mean, we have people, we just presented to 4,000 people and we said some things that were very unpopular and everybody was like, yeah, we're not going to follow this. We're not going to follow icons. We're not going to follow case studies and case series, and we're in charge of 15 review papers right now. So on neuro and sexuality, neuro and women, neuro and Alzheimer's and lifestyle and all of them lifestyle. And I'm working with amazing people on each of these papers. There are no case studies in any of these. You don't put case studies. You don't even put retrospective studies. If you can find, randomized clinical trials
or large observational data that have been followed
then
for
that's
many
great.
years.
But you don't put case studies. And most of social media is
Anecdotes.
No.
I'm the pessimistic one. Yeah, a little bit of a misanthrope and skeptical one,
Yeah.
but I feed off of his optimism. I think the amount of junk that we see on social media, we also see incredible people challenging them, which is hopeful. And I think hopefully with the democratization of sharing, knowledge and information and not paywalling papers and have people having access to data, I think it's going to get better and better. So.
I think the mistrust has to do with the medical establishment and everything that happened with COVID. What do you guys think?
Had a huge role in it.
But if you're saying the noise level is less and is not as much as before, maybe you disagree.
I don't know which side of the COVID you fall on, but I think the issue with COVID was I loved it.
What'd you love about it?
Arguments. There's
the debate?
There's no other purpose for your mouth than to debate. If it's eating a burger, it's not.
Your kids must just love you.
Oh, they debate.
Your family
like crazy.
dinners must be
Oh yeah,
awesome.
it's noisy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's debate. It's debate. Truth comes to the surface. Let the arguments prevail. Truth will come to the surface. Even at the moment, in the middle of the fight, you feel like, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming. Doesn't matter. It comes to the surface. Always comes to the surface. Complexity comes to the surface. So nobody should silence debate. Even right now, there are some things I'm hearing that I'm not happy with. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as we can debate and argue, some young men. Some young man in their grandmother's basement, probably with a short on, without a shirt, but brilliant mind, makes a counter argument against this incredible speaker, and that counter argument is so clean that becomes the viral. And now that's ubiquitous. It's available to everyone.
So Bruce Miller was quoted in the New York Times article. We mentioned him before, UCSF, Memory and Aging Center director. It's one thing to say that you're reversing an illness because someone says that they feel better, and another to prove it, says Dr. Miller. We don't have the proof.
Yeah.
So his point is, just as we've been saying all along, that a few case series and maybe his interim analysis of a current clinical trial that he's doing in some 70 patients is just not enough, right? If it's going to cost a lot, if it's going to be such a complex protocol, and it's built on too many of these psychological tricks and tactics and exploitation and fear, that it's not believable.
Yeah.
And it's
and it takes away the focus from some things that work.
Right. Right.
We know that prevention works. I don't know if you actually saw the Pointer study just came out
Tell us
at
about it.
AAIC. So the Pointer study, which is essentially a mirror image of the finger study, Finnish geriatric study that was published back in 2015. And they looked at lifestyle intervention in a US-based population. And they found out that people who were in an intervention group did really well, which means that not only was, the cognition in decline, which happens to all of us as we age, our cognition declines. It didn't even plateau. It actually improved. And they looked at two groups. They looked at an intervention group where they were guided and they were coached to live a healthy lifestyle. And then they had a group where they were self-guided and they did it by themselves. The coached group actually did better, which means involvement in community, eating better, exercising on a regular basis really, really works. And we have evidence from so many other studies that up to 50 to 60% of Alzheimer's disease can be prevented within our lifetime. We just take away focus from all of that into something like this. I really, truly am so passionate about prevention, and it is good enough. It's going to save us so much money, so much headache, and people are going to live healthy lives.
And it was a robust study, more than 2,100 people over several years, and well-grounded institutions, well done. And so I think that's the whole point, that we have things that work, and we don't need to buy $25,000 worth of pills.
Right.
But the rebuttal on the Apollo Health website was a little bit more big pharma against the establishment.
Yeah.
The author of this New York Times article was influenced and biased by the medical establishment. And so again, using a similar tactic, trying to point people towards believing his points here.
We hear that a lot. I think it's just whitewashing. Even right now when we talk about, say, for example, LDL cholesterol, just as an example, is a huge risk factor for both stroke and Alzheimer's disease. And when people, especially during their midlife, based on the Lancet Commission report for dementia, when they address their LDL and lower it during midlife, they reduce their risk of Alzheimer's disease. And sometimes you just have the genes that keeps your LDL up. No matter what you do, how much kale you eat or exercise you do, it just won't come down. So we recommend statins. And that's when the attack starts. Oh, you're a pharma show. How much money are they paying you? And so this distrust is there. And I just hope that people can see the nuance in that it's important for both to happen, both relying on medication as well as living a healthy lifestyle.
This shirt was from Pfizer, wasn't it?
What? This shirt? Yes. Pfizer sent it.
What do you guys think
Check
about
the tag.
this? The how they compare their RECODE protocol to some of the other antibodies and no treatment, and its comparison of the cognitive score.
So just call it out, basically changes in cognitive score if you do nothing in this population that he has not defined. No treatment, you drop in cognition. And then the 3 amyloid therapies, you still drop in cognition over time. But with RECODE, you improve by 4-fold in cognition.
So the first thing I would tell you is that I think this person just got a hold of the new tools to create graphs.
Canva,
so
it's probably Canva.
So they just got a hold of Canva. So they're not that,
Yeah.
And second of all, none of this is verifiable.
What do they
based
even
on what?
mean?
What population? What
does -4 mean?
Yeah.
What does -2 and +2?
No, even if they had defined those, it's not repeatable. It's not, nobody can so you want me to create, I can make you great graphs, even bigger than those.
I'm really good at Canva.
We're good. She's amazing at Canva. So it means nothing. Just because you create graphs, it's very easy to come up with a debate. Show us your numbers. Show us the population. Do it. Even we have some friends that said that atherosclerosis was reversed doing certain diet, right? And then for 20-something years, nobody's able to repeat it. When something is not repeated like that in a validated, proper setting, then there's something wrong with the original study.
Right. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it later. But Eamon, his thing is, hey, I've scanned like 250,000 brains with my SPECT imaging. Right. It's like, where's the data?
Yeah, we're waiting.
Right? Like, I can't. I've looked for it. I can't find it. But the first thing that he mentions when he goes on a big podcast, Chris Williamson podcast, is I've scanned 250,000 brains with my SPECT. This is how it is, and this is what I know about that.
So somebody should do time analysis, because by that measure, he's like 250 years old. Yeah, I mean, SPECT, we've done this. It takes time, So, give us data. Give us the data, and then and why is there the fact that nobody else can see the same thing? Right. In one of the talks. And they said that I can tell with 100% certainty using SPECT the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's and depression from just the images.
Ayman said that?
Yeah. And I got up and I said, excuse me, I can't tell with 100% certainty that you exist.
What did he say? Did you really say that?
Yeah, I did say that. And she knows.
Yeah,
I said
yeah.
that.
No,
I said
it was
Beautiful.
the APA conference.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yeah. And I said, no, but our data shows this and da-da-da. I'm like, there's no way that any imaging, and by just
Who
looking
says?
at
A
imaging.
good scientist never says 100%.
And from
no,
imaging.
no good doctor, no good scientist ever
No,
says
never.
100%.
And from imaging alone.
Right.
It's impossible. Even with frontotemporal lobe dementia, where you can see distinct frontal lobe atrophy and temporal lobe atrophy, but we know that there's a concept of reserve, that even atrophy is not perfectly correlated with outcome.
Yeah.
So to say 100%?
Yeah, I was at a football showcase, just doing some sideline work as a concussion neurologist, and one of the parents came up to me and he was asking me. He said, I was told my kid has dementia. And again, this is secondhand, right? This isn't, I haven't factually verified that. He's 16 years old. Oh. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, I went to the Amen clinic. Oh. I did SPECT imaging.
For how much?
He said he spent a total of $5,000.
Yeah.
And let me just say, I was in the middle of the Central Valley in Fresno, California. They had to travel, 2+ hours, spend money that, they probably didn't have. I mean, it's probably 99% of people can't just shell out $5,000, right? And he said that his kid was diagnosed with dementia, and that was it. He was sent on his way, given supplements, and said to come back.
Some saffron.
For some, probably.
Yeah,
but
it had to be.
At the same, I'm telling you, I talked to this guy probably for 5 minutes, and I'm not touting myself as a great clinician, but you could see that there was a clear rift in between the father and the son, and that had to do a lot with the behavioral issues for which he went to Amen for.
Yeah.
And what was particularly striking and upsetting was he's a psychiatrist.
Yes.
At the very least, you just got to ask him about how are things at home. A 16-year-old that's misbehaving, I don't know, again, not factual because this came from the parent, but how do you come to diagnosing the kid with a dementia, giving him supplements and sending him on his way?
It's insane.
Is in my opinion, probably a misdiagnosis. But then on top of that, it's what are you doing to that whole relationship? And then what are you doing for that kid? Where, and like you guys said, there's a delay in psychological care that he could get there, right?
Yeah, especially at that age, the danger of that delay.
At that age.
The danger of that delay is real, it's substantive. And so this is a great point you're making. The consequences can be dire.
Yeah.
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 To its infinite regress. I mean, you take it all the way to, often.
The psychology of carrying that label now for that kid to know that you're diagnosed with dementia. It's devastating for them.
We've had patients who when they got the diagnosis of dementia, they took the steps and the outcome into their own hand,
Right.
But what if it's false diagnosis, which is things like
and
this?
A 16-year-old, you can't diagnose dementia.
No.
Unbelievable.
It's just bewildering. But this is, again, I'm the optimist. I'm the crazy optimist.
Right.
I think that people are becoming aware of the language. People are becoming aware of how to look at all of this. And thanks to you guys, I mean, going through a paper like this is critical. Yeah. And also, not to just point it all out, all of us all the time have to kind of self-reflect to make sure that we're not contributing to some of that noise, because the world of social media is tough. And even let me just insight, you want to be because much of your business is dependent on that, much of your work is depending on that. For us, we do community work. Even our community work, reaching out, is social work. So and if you're not interesting, if you're not doing the the little dance, which I can't do, so that's out, and or you're not doing the 3 things that saves your life, kind of thing, and or the 3 poisons, then you're not going to get the kind of vision and eyeballs that would make a difference in this world. But we have to hold ourselves accountable nonetheless.
I'll tell you what, before that interaction, I've told you this, before that interaction, certainly I was skeptical, but I thought, this is a local issue around LA where maybe people that can afford it are spending the money for it, and it's not really that big of an issue. But when I went out there, that's Central Valley, Fresno.
Yeah.
And people are driving all that way and paying all that money and potentially getting those diagnoses. It just completely blew my mind and put me on the other side of things.
Absolutely.
I think, totally.
I think it also, just to kind of bring it back to ourselves, right? So you talked about accountability and about us doing a better job with our patients as neurologists and as people who are in the field of brain health. I think it's also very, very important for each and every neurologist. I don't know if you have some neurologists in the audience, but to bring this conversation with our patients. It's our responsibility to kind of walk with them on that pathway. It's not just a diagnose and adios. They always, say that about us. But, just sitting down and, talking to them about what that means, showing a lot of love and compassion, addressing their family, addressing the next steps, telling them about all the evidence that shows that there are certain things that you can do to slow down the progression of the disease, that your mental health is incredibly important, that this is not just end all be all diagnosis, that even if you have loss of memory and loss of ability to make decisions for yourself, you're still you. You're that beautiful, lovely person, and we all are here to support you in every way we can. Just because you can't remember where you put your things or you can't remember your daughter's name, you're you. And that in itself is a beautiful thing. So for us neurologists to kind of have that compassion and also that rigorous scientific evidence-based way of imparting knowledge to them, to say like, now is the time where you're going to get a lot of pseudoscientific information. You're going to go out there on YouTube and on Instagram and you're going to say someone saying 3 things you can do to reverse your Alzheimer's disease. Make sure you don't listen to that. And really making it simple enough for them to say, this matters, this matters, this matters, making a list for them, and the things that they should be very wary of. We should continue that journey with them. I don't see that happening. Usually they're either given a brochure or they're sent to a support group. That's not good enough. We have to be a part of their journey.
So let's look at this here. I think the Amen Clinic and that approach brings up a lot more of this tactic. In this case, it's a little bit more face-to-face rapport building or cold reading, that a palm reader or a psychic might use in order to draw out someone's trust in them and then be able to kind of implement some costly sale. And so in this case, I could read Daniel's palm right now and say, what, just by this line right here, I can see you've lived a hard life. You've worked very hard to get to where you are now. But it must have been stressful.
Oh, yeah.
You seem like a genuine person.
I am.
And so there's flattery, there's all of this other stuff. But by this one callus right here, by this area, I can tell your emotions are right on the surface. And that's the way you live. I have the solution for you.
What is it?
Right. So, I mean,
I'm sorry, I actually want my palm.
Can you do for me as well? It's really good.
It's really good, yeah.
And
So if neurology doesn't work,
Yes, no.
Well,
that was his career before neurology.
before neurology.
I'll call out, though. I mean, we do use these tactics, right? All these sales tactics are to build some type of relationship with patients. But at the end of it all has to be some genuine, I don't know. This is where the limitations of my knowledge is.
Yes.
But this is what I hope for you, and this is what I can do to support you.
But
that's not the case in sales. When there's a conflict of interest. But here's a cold reader at work, and so I want to watch this with you guys.
Ever in a car accident?
Yes, I was in a car accident when I was about 15 or 16. And also when I was about 25, maybe. Both were, I didn't hit my head, but I, got flung pretty, intensely.
So
whiplash for sure, yes.
So, because when I see your scan, the reason I think trauma is you see these dimples in the back. So have low activity in the front, but if you fall on the back of your head, your brain then bounces and hits the front. And it's in a skull that has sharp bony ridges. And so I don't know why God didn't put bumper cars.
Yeah.
Now, you do everything I say.
I will do everything you say.
This is how much better your brain can do.
Really?
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Oh my God! It's
So
like cotton
what
candy.
I want you to do is love your breath.
Wow.
Wow.
This makes me mad.
Okay, my approach was different before this video. That's scary. That's complete reading techniques and wow. And yeah, it's this is the what we're facing, and he's pretty popular.
The 150 videos like this. It's called Scan My Brain. It's on YouTube.
With celebrities.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And it follows the same. It's people are looking for their future to be read, you know, and so and he knows how to do it well, and better tools. You're using his palm. He's got beautiful images, amazing.
Right. So then it speaks to this authority, this technique, I mean, they paid, you know, however many dollars, $5,000. So it's the sunk
that's
cost
just the
fallacy.
imaging.
Right. And so now you've got all of this buy-in. And in that position where you're trying to find an answer and you've got a white coat in front of you with a technical tool that you couldn't ever, you know, come upon yourself, it is a scary place to be. You're vulnerable. I would be vulnerable if someone showed me that and said, you have holes in your brain and I'm going to fill those. But you got to listen to everything I tell you.
And he literally says that.
Yeah.
You have to listen to everything I tell you.
Right. Well, who you know, he's got her brain.
Yeah, that's it.
It's in a black box. We can't see it. And so we're vulnerable to someone like that.
I'm at a loss of words, and I always have a lot of words. But this is exactly what we're all talking about, right? So just not basing any of these statements on evidence-based, guideline-directed therapies. I mean, we have excellent experts who have dedicated their lives for understanding CTE and traumatic brain injury and the different kind of imaging modalities that show the damage, the neuroinflammation that happens in Loma Linda. We were involved in writing a couple of, I don't claim to be an expert, but we were involved in writing some of the publications on traumatic brain injury. And it is such a complex and a very different field, and there's so much that is happening, positive things that are happening, but it's not even close to what the claims are.
It's tough, but the reality of the field is that right now, I think, when did we start the internet? Internet started in the 1990s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the ubiquity of it started with smartphones, which is 2010. And then, so we're maybe 15 years into this. It's not much time. We're doing well.
Yeah.
We're doing well. Yeah. You and I are.
Considering
we're not talking about this
history,
person.
right.
Yeah. We're talking about this, but 15 years into this. Remember, Dark Ages went on for 1,000 years. Those timelines are shrinking.
Yeah.
And we must address this in this way, in a way where we actually. So to bring a lot of this together is the things that are on our way are the comfort words like placebo. What do we have to lose? That's a big one. I have nothing to lose. And we have to come up with cleaner, like even right now we talked about placebo. I'm not happy with the language we have. We really have to become incredibly good at short, concise terminology that really describes it to the general population. Why just relying on placebo is not only not good enough, it is actually taking the space of real work.
Yeah.
The fact that when you say, what do I have to lose? What you have to lose is funding, time, opportunity. But more importantly, it's not just about you. That concept, if not fought back, is actually slowing down public health.
Agreed.
And so I think it's critical that we push those concepts. And it's happening. It's happening in real time.
And also in addition to that, when we speak with our patients or with our communities about health in general and specifically about brain health, knowing that it's okay not to know everything and when to say, I don't know this and it's okay. Or I will not create an answer for you if there is none there available. And I hope that you can trust me there. I hope that my integrity comes out right there when I tell you we don't know beyond this level. And for people to be okay with that. And I think that essentially raises the value of scientific methodology and this rigor that we see in science. That these are things that we're studying. Imagine us not knowing anything in this field 15 years ago, but now we do. So I hope we can actually say that in maybe 1 or 2 sentences,
Yeah.
enough to hold people's attention and enough for it to be Instagrammable, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to be Instagrammable.
Yeah. Why don't we shift to what a standard assessment potentially with treatment to prevent dementia looks like?
What
Yes.
does the workup look like? What should somebody expect when they come to a place that is reputable and is going to do what is right now the standard of care for someone who has cognitive concerns?
So who should have evaluation is the, I think, first step is because there's a lot of, if we had infinite resources, then everybody.
No.
And we might get there fairly soon with wearable devices that will get us such robust information that will be better than imaging because it's real time, back and forth, reactionary data that's going to give you incredible data and that will tell you exactly when a person's risk is above the standard deviation of change during the day.
And that's not science fiction. That's happening.
That's happening.
We will have that data.
Yeah. So even a stress test would be morning problem solving versus evening problem solving, and your phone would tell you with an incredible level of detail. This is signal once, twice, 3 times, and you would have enough population level data that would be actionable. We're not there. So cost determines who. Cost determines who. So who should be getting the workup? If you're having memory issues where you're forgetting your keys, it's okay. Because we all, especially as you get older, because a lot of times as you get older, you're not worse for your memory than a younger person. The younger person didn't care. The only thing that young 16-year-old cared about, especially if it was a boy, was not the key. And if it was the key, it was whose home he was going to go with the key. So that was the only thing. As we get older, we have many, many more things that are affecting us, influencing us. The little pain in the shoulder right now, I'm feeling because I did the wrong workout. The yesterday's stressors, tomorrow's expectations, and so
sleep.
on. No sleep, and so on and so forth. So lots of things. So it might be those, and so you don't have to jump to a conclusion that you have dementia, even if you have a family history. But if it's happening repeatedly and if somebody else is telling you it's happening, it's good to get evaluated. And what does evaluation look like? You go to a neurologist, they do a cognitive test. It could be a very simple thing, a 30 point test such as MoCA or Foldstein, where they ask you some questions, they show you some pictures, they ask you to recall the words a few minutes later, do some calculations. And because it's been done pretty repeatedly, it's a good first sign. Okay, I have to check. This is even before the fact that if you have difficulty with driving or finances or daily activities, that should get you to the doctor. But before that, and then if that gives them a signal, let's say that you get a 25 out of 30, and although I don't go by the numbers because there's so many other factors, then they go to the next step, which is imaging, to make sure it's not a stroke or microvascular disease or even degenerative. Although it's, as much as we think MRI is good for that, it's not. So and then neuropsychological testing, which is amazing. It's painful. You go to 2 to 5 hours of questioning and problem solving and card sorting and all the kind of stuff. And at the end of it, it is specific enough to tell you, they're in the 90 percentile when it came to executive function. They're 90 percentile in memory. In language, but short-term memory, they were in the 5 percentile. That's a signal. And so with that, and then of course they do the lab tests, which are the reversible things, B12, thyroid, vitamin D now is added a lot of times, and other metabolics to make sure those are not the causal factors. Sometimes infections. And if all of that kind of points in that direction, then they say, this is a sign. A lot of times you're allowed to say this person has dementia or they have even Alzheimer's dementia from just these. But you can go further and get lumbar puncture or now through blood tests. We're at an age now through blood tests, you can actually tell phospho-tau and amyloid levels and the ratios and tell you that you have high risk. And the combination of those give us a great deal of certainty where the person is in their journey of cognition. Or are they in full-blown Alzheimer's? And so that's what they would have to do. And it's fairly reliable. We now know that when you do this stuff, fairly certain that the progression is known, the stage is known. The rate of progression varies depending on some other factors as well, including your reserve. But that's a general picture of what you can do. Am I missing something?
No, I think that's
What I would just say, to put into context, what we're looking for as a neurologist is everything you just said, data from all of those different tests and evaluations, but also the clinical history where the individual is going to paint a picture about a progression. An onset, was it abrupt? Was it slow?
Yeah.
And then how did that affect the cognitive domains as a whole? Is it just affecting short-term memory? Is it long-term memory, which would be unusual for a neurodegenerative disease to affect? Or is it specifically executive function? Or is the individual unaware of the issues and it's the family member telling you?
Exactly.
And all of these clues tell us about the focality. We're trying to localize, where does this cognitive deficit, this difficulty that the person's communicating us, where does it live in the brain? What circuits and networks are affected? Because then that will help us look at the imaging. Are those also atrophied, or do they have low activity on a functional PET scan, a FDG PET? And then is that lining up with our suspicion when we get the blood work? Or does none of it line up and it's really global cognitive impairment, but they also have depressive features, or that there's vitamin deficiencies or hormone imbalances? And so you start to put a different picture together, but you're looking for a pattern.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing. And if you get a good clinical history, you do a good exam, you get the good imaging and the blood work and everything like that, you can put a pattern together.
So important.
I love the fact that you said that. History is critical because we just started this whole conversation with depression and things, and it's very common. Anxiety, depression, all these other factors that are major contributors that may be the totality of the picture. So history part is very important.
And it also puts some of the agency back in our audience members and any patient's hands, that you can determine a lot on your own. And if you're not paying attention, you're not advocating to your primary care physician or finding a neurologist or a psychiatrist that's going to hear you out, then you're going to miss something. And there's opportunities here. You said, the neurodegenerative pattern could be accumulating, progressing over years, 10, 20 years. And that's an important thing to recognize in oneself. Yeah. The earlier you catch it, the better.
Do you advocate or recommend any testing that someone can do on their own outside of the context of visiting a neurologist to see where they're at, or no?
There are some tests that are available as an app now where people can actually get a sense of how their cognition is. Does it give accurate results? Probably not. One of the things that I've noticed is I think a lot of primary care physicians and family practitioners should also be trained to detect dementia or cognitive impairment in their patients. And I still see that the difference between getting old and having memory problem is not clear. Oh, it's normal, you're just aging. I hear that often, and it's pretty shocking, at this day and age, for a family practitioner to be able to say something like that to their patients. And so, if someone has not had access to a neurologist, or they don't have that insurance to see a neurologist, very important for them to be an advocate for themselves to say, no, I noticed something and I need to be seen and assessed. Unfortunately, I don't think there are any digital or any particular cognitive testing available right now for people to test themselves. I think Cleveland Clinic came up with something on their website, but it hasn't been validated yet. So I can't say with any degree of certainty that would be the way to go.
Got it. What's up?
Well, we did talk about the brain care score out of MGH's McCann's Brain Health Center, which is not a cognitive test. I agree with you that there's really, Brain HQ is the one that's most widely used and discussed in the literature. But for maybe a 20, 30, 40-year-old who's otherwise pretty healthy and trying to track themselves and figure out if they're going to be at risk, or if there's subtle differences in cognition that they could pick up, really the tests aren't built for that. Right? They're screeners and or really detailed tests for learning disabilities and other bigger problems. But to get a sense of where you're at from a risk factor profile, there are good tools for that. The brain care score is one of those. It's getting across all those lifestyle factors and things like that we talk about, even a sense of meaning in life and social support and social connection, which was, I think, a cool addition to the study.
I love that. Yeah.
One of the projects that we had, and we're continuing it in our own practice and in our communities, is essentially not even waiting for people to start having cognitive decline and kind of just looking at what you were were referring to the risk factors. If you have a family history of dementia, and if you may have some vascular risk factors like high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, or pre-diabetes even, and if you're not living a very healthy lifestyle, which is, unfortunately, is a common thing that we're seeing in the United States. And for internal medicine or general practitioners, if they see their patients carrying this, cardiometabolic risk factors, they should definitely refer them for some cognitive testing, or maybe just do it in their clinic before it gets to a point where cognitive impairment becomes prominent.
Yeah. I think the risk factor discussion is really important, especially when we start talking about how do we prevent dementia?
Yeah.
What's the kind of treatments that we talk about? And this is that.
There it is.
There it is.
Love it.
Their infographic, I think, really, that's the Instagrammable piece that science is trying to achieve. Obviously, it's still pretty clunky, and you've got to really work through it. But on the left there is the Lancet's figure that describes throughout an age span what are the risk factors that contribute to dementia and stroke. And then here is a table on the right with risk factors in a UK biobank, a massive data set. I think it was 250 or 350,000 people, where they're able to statistically get down to the most potent predictors of who's going to have a dementia or a stroke diagnosis before the age of 65 in that population. Right. Coming in healthy to the study and then developing the diagnosis on the chart, the medical chart, of either dementia or stroke. And they've isolated a number of risk factors that line up pretty well with Lancet's commission statement.
Yeah.
I find it more hopeful than any pseudoscientific advertisements and infomercial ever. This makes me so happy. I mean, look at the number of risk factors that we can have some influence on. Exactly. They added high LDL and visual loss in 2024. And I feel like they keep on adding things as we move along, which is good news. Like, oh, here's a risk factor to be aware of.
Your Pfizer support, right?
The audience might think this is actually
joking.
true. It's a joke.
So, let's pick one of these. I mean, these are incredibly empowering. Hearing loss. So we interviewed Dr. Lin from Hopkins. And he's a preeminent person working on this. And now they're coming out with an app where through phone they can detect, hearing loss. And that's something that's not addressed commonly, especially at early stage. But it's a major contributor, as much as 10% of the way you can actually attribute things at R squared, is significant. And hearing loss, we should definitely promulgate and spread that information that if you have hearing loss, especially midlife or earlier, address it, get treatment for it. Alcohol and so many other things that are, like Ayesha said, to me, it's incredibly optimistic right there, more than anything anybody else can peddle to me.
I want to do something. I want to do an exercise real quick.
Yes.
So on the count of three. No, on the count of three, if you could completely do away with one risk factor for developing dementia from the entire world's population, which one would you pick? On the count of three, right? You're just going to say it into the microphone. Go ahead. The one modifiable risk factor
that you're going to address to delete dementia.
That you would just completely delete as a risk factor for dementia.
Oh, like not important.
No. That's that important.
It's that important.
It's that important. Ready? You can only pick one.
I think we're going to say the same thing.
You think so? Mm-hmm. All right. 1, 2, 3.
Depression.
Cognitive reserve. It's not even there though, right? Yeah. Education.
By numbers, if I have to go by... Yeah.
65%.
Well, listen, I wasn't looking for the correct answer. Like,
all right, can we do this again?
Do you know the percentage?
I think I win.
Well, I was going to say LDL.
I actually won.
You guys are.
I know it too well, but it's also where my heart's at. Depression.
Depression is important because of multiple reasons. Yeah. Depression is very important.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
It's the sexiest one too.
It is the sexiest one. But then we're talking about, depression is a mimic for dementia and it's one of the reversible dementias. How does that play into when you're talking about it as a risk factor versus a mimic? Yeah. Not a mimic, but versus an irreversible dementia.
You can distill, you can separate those out.
They do a reverse causality analysis, which we talked about.
No, I agree. Depression is a big one because it also has quality of life and lots of other ways that it affects you. I just went by the numbers.
Did you?
No.
But
LDL
this
is
number is actually bigger.
LDL is, and we're learning more and more that there's a huge overlap between, vascular cognitive impairment and the neurodegenerative Alzheimer's type pathology, and how important taking care of blood vessels in the brain is. And LDL seems to, we're always about 10 years late after American Heart Association and the cardiologist was, and we're seeing how important blood pressure and LDL is for brain health as well.
Can we dig into LDL a little bit?
Yeah.
Before we go
Please,
there,
go.
Sorry. So you picked the popular one because nobody's going to oppose yours. I'm going to pick the unpopular one.
All right.
Alcohol.
Okay.
I mean, the social impact of alcohol and its effect on the brain.
You lost a lot of friends.
I know, a lot of people. I think it's pretty big too.
Tell me, what do you mean? So you've stopped drinking? Is that what you're saying?
No, the opposite. You think it's like a essential for socialization and community?
No, absolutely not. I think it's destructive.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know about stop drinking because we want people to follow you, but reduce it significantly. I think so. What are your thoughts?
No, I was wondering what you meant by you've lost a lot of friends.
Because they want to drink, and I say you shouldn't drink as much as you think you should be drinking.
I see. I thought you meant you stopped drinking and therefore cannot relate to that.
No. I still drink a glass of wine here and there.
Yeah, okay.
But the reality is it's pretty destructive, especially at what we... So it's been pushed so hard that people think that they should be drinking every day, and the data is not there. It's pretty destructive, yeah. So we can go to the next exercise.
But what about the abstinence from alcohol? Could also be a risk factor.
I think the studies...
What is that?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Continue. No,
you
said no, I'll say.
I think the data is not strong with that. I think it's mostly population-based studies. And when you look at the data in the context of large data sets and outcomes, the data is pretty strong.
Well, in this data set, which is large, they found that abstinence to alcohol use was a risk factor. But then they did a reverse causality analysis that tries to take into account the timing of the potential abstinence and suggested that it was concurrent with the diagnosis of a dementia. And so therefore it's that people were developing a dementia and didn't drink anymore.
Correct.
Right, exactly.
Correct.
And there was another paper that showed that people who stopped drinking already had
a
some
problem,
other condition,
Correct.
whether it was fatty liver or some cardiovascular disease.
So they came with risks.
They came with risks, and
that's
they
what
hadn't-
led to their abstinence.
We've looked at this
Exactly.
data quite a bit, and we've gotten in trouble with this quite a bit. So we shouldn't be ending this conversation. Let's go to a lighter. Yeah.
So I think let's talk about kind of treatments that might
Can
address.
we do LDL?
Okay, sure.
Well,
Yeah.
the only reason I wanted to ask is about, with all the blood work we hinted at in the RECODE protocol or any kind of executive health screen that are now becoming popular, if you were to expand the blood screening that you could get today and spend $1,000 on getting every test possible, it would cause problems, right?
Yeah.
You get false positives, you start treating things
all over
that
the place.
aren't actually affecting you. But what, from a lipid metabolism perspective, should you be getting? Because ApoB has become quite popular, and meeting with our nutrition friends from Zoe, it seems like there are some lipids that we should be looking at that aren't coming in our standard panels.
We're public health people.
Yeah.
LDL.
LDL is just...
It's
That's-
basically the same thing.
Yeah.
For like 95% of the population, ApoB and LDL are essentially the same thing. And so, if we really want to kind of focus on that small percentage of people that might have discrepancy in their LDL and ApoB, like Dean said, we're public health people, and it really, for the amount of attention that is being given to this issue, it's not really a
The
big
appropriate screener is LDL.
Yes.
That's going to meet
Yes.
most needs.
I was invited. I have some patients who they want extra attention. So we were flown in their private jet to Florida, $85,000 workup. And the whole time I'm arguing with him. I'm like, why? He's a good friend. It's absolutely unnecessary. And the number of panels, this person left anemic afterwards. I mean, just
Oh, yeah.
unbelievable.
Vials
So
of
if he
blood.
wasn't damaged, he was damaged after. His brain probably looked at it like that Amon's clinic brain. It is LDL is a good enough marker right now, and at public health level. Oh, by the way, the study we're doing in the communities right now all we are checking is hemoglobin A1C and LDL, and they're strong enough. We call them as two of the four horsemen.
Yeah.
And that's all you got to worry
What
about.
about insulin levels, fasting insulin?
No, all those are valuable. We did a whole study on NHANES looking at insulin resistance and HOMA and all of that stuff. Yeah, you can look at all of that. And you can go into much more detail. First of all, how much of that is actionable? So you got all that knowledge. Then what?
Right.
So that's why we are so much against the CGM. These looking at peaks and valleys and peaks. Just because you have data doesn't mean it's meaningful. And more importantly, it's actionable. What you're working at is what's actionable, and LDL is good enough for us. Yeah, it might not be the sexiest thing in the planet.
Well, and that's what we keep coming back to as we interview more people. It's like there are standard things that are boring, but that give you more action, more opportunity to make a change and track that than the nuanced, 1% incremental things.
So we were just in a conversation with the American Heart Association, which we were going to bring as
This
part
morning.
of this big study in LA, the largest study. I'm going to say it again, the largest study on brain health in the country. We have all these other partners, UCSF, Stanford, and everybody else. And we were talking with the American Heart Association, and I was trying to ingratiate myself to them, but more importantly, I believe it. The most blood pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we have community gatherings, by the way, we're going to invite you to the next one in November
It's a health
30th.
fair.
Health
Yeah.
fair.
Would love that.
We will have it in 8 places in LA. You would think as neurologists we would be doing something like giving people hammers, right? No, blood pressure devices.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so those are the high yield.
Yeah.
If people know their blood pressure and see the vicissitudes and vacillations of blood pressure, and they know that in the morning it goes way up to, like most people don't know that their blood pressure went to 220. That's a serious thing. And a great proportion of population, their blood pressures do vacillate that high. They find out too late. In my own family, well, I'll say it because it's going to be in the book anyway. My mother, brilliant, spoke 9 languages, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it fit socially to the nth power. Like you've never seen a social human being like this.
Every
Orange
birthday,
County was hers.
every Thanksgiving, every Christmas was at her
There was
place.
no party in Orange County
No.
that she didn't. So,
Yeah.
but at
She was the
age,
headquarters.
Yeah, at age 79, she had a massive blood pressure problem where it got to 240. So I went to the look at the imaging MRI, whiteout,
Terrible.
white. Yeah, but she had reserve. So she survived, went past that. And this is a thin person that took care of themselves and all that. And we see this all the time. When we were checking blood pressures in the clinic, almost 60 to 70% of them have blood pressures above 150 systolic.
Wow.
Yet people don't know. They're not even being met. So that's more valuable than the panel that I love Zoe, but I'm going to stick to my LDL, hemoglobin A1C, and blood pressure.
Yeah.
And if we just do those 3, that's 3 of the 4 horsemen, then we are in good shape. Then we've done majority of the public health. Yeah.
What about sleep? So sleep didn't make it to this end of the analysis
Yeah.
because it was not measured well with
Yeah.
any type of nuance or detail. It was a subjective report, and they admit to that limitation. I'm sure it would have otherwise made it.
Yeah.
Maybe
to
next
the-
year
Yeah.
or in 2 years, that definitely will be there.
Right.
It's so important.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that evolution selected you to be knocked out for 1/3 of your life with lions and bears out there. You know, it's that important.
Yeah.
It wasn't for your liver. Sorry, hepatologist. It was for your brain.
Yeah.
And we know the cleansing effect. We know what microglia do. We know the memory consolidation. We know all the things that happen during sleep. It's incredibly important. The outcome thereof is difficult to measure because the measurement thereof is nearly impossible now. Very few people get sleep studies. They're not done well, or they're not done specifically to track
The interpretation is in
Interpretation,
the eyes of the person who's looking at this hypnogram, this incredibly complex, or
Yes.
polysomnogram, this incredibly complex set of waveforms, and only 86% of the time do they even agree on the diagnosis.
Correct, exactly. But I think Dr. Heyman would say 100%.
What about exercise? Talk to us.
Oh, yeah. We probably need security tonight.
Yes.
Talk to us about exercise. Let me give you.
Is he a neighbor?
No.
No. I'm just kidding.
let me give you an example or a hypothetical. I love hypotheticals. A ratio of aerobic to resistance training that you would recommend, like percentages, 50-50.
You want a protocol from us?
80-20, something. I don't know.
I don't want to be in that group.
Right.
No.
My gosh, I mean, exercise is so important. We have tremendous data around it. And if, sometimes when I am forced to say, like, if there's one thing you can pick for brain health, what would it be? It's always exercise.
And we both have masters in nutrition.
Yeah, I'm a chef too.
But it's exercise first.
Yeah.
Exercise first.
As far as the ratio is concerned, I think it just depends on the person, right? It depends on their needs. There's been a lot of emphasis on aerobic, but we now know that the muscle mass actually makes a huge difference. It's essentially a cardiometabolic sink, and it improves your glucose metabolism, lipid metabolism. It improves your inflammatory levels. We know that BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is released into the brain, and that kind of creates more connections between brain cells. And so for people who are over the age of 60, it seems that building more muscle mass and engaging in resistance training is incredibly important. But of course, it has to be a combination of both. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on open circuit versus closed circuit aerobic activity? So, for example, open circuit would be, when you're thinking alongside your aerobic activity, like tennis, for example.
Yeah.
Closed circuit, running or swimming.
Yeah.
There's been benefits shown for boxing and Parkinson's disease patients. So that would be an example of open circuit. Any thoughts on that specifically? Or?
I would say, of course, the complex open circuit is better. But to be honest, we don't have good data. I mean, I'm working with Dr. Zakaria from Hopkins on a paper right now, review paper on exercise and brain health. The data is not that good. Well, here's the data, the good data. The good data is both aerobic and anaerobic have profound effect on brain health, even psychological health. I mean, strength training is critically important. If you're going to pick one type of strength, leg strength more than upper extremity. Although for somebody like me who didn't do shoulders and now I'm suffering, but leg strength is important. There are studies that give you, what was the MCI study, twin study, that showed that 30-something% reversal of MCI and all that. But just because a couple of papers came out. So the numbers we can't rely on. 47, yeah. We can't rely on numbers, but they're incredibly powerful. And then to go to the next level of detail of what type of exercise, specifically swimming versus open circuit, closed circuit, I think we don't have data. Then in that case, what you should do is that exercise that's going to keep you engaged on a regular basis is going to be aerobic as well as anaerobic. That's your exercise. If it's pickleball, well, maybe not pickleball, because I'm a tennis
Don't be
player.
anti-pickleball.
I know.
Yeah.
But whatever
He's a
it
tennis
takes.
player and he just poo-poos.
Whatever it takes to do aerobic, do aerobic.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes to do anaerobic, especially leg strength, do that. The rest, we don't have good data for you. And we're doing the review right now, and I was like all gung-ho, we're going to give this review, because you always want your review to give tables with numbers and all. We don't have data. But we do have data that exercise is incredibly important for brain health. Not just everybody says BDNF. Well, it's not just BDNF and GDNF and VEGF and this. Across the board, metabolic strength. And then here's the big one. The number one factor for aging and vitality is muscle mass and strength. As much as we think about everything else, it's muscle mass and strength. So first we have to define what that first term is, which is aging well. But exercises is that important.
It's good that we're getting all of this, detailed, nuance information and data on, say, for example, remember the paper on the grip strength or leg strength, right? We have, there it is, hand grip.
But do you really think it was grip strength?
No.
So it's a good marker.
It's a good marker, right?
It was a proxy,
Or the HIIT. Doing, high intensity is much better than just like doing. But when you look at the larger data, even leisure time physical activity like gardening tends to be great.
In the paper we're putting, actually people who were moving throughout the day did
just
better
walking.
than HIIT exercise. So it's whatever
works
keep
best
you
for
moving
people.
throughout the day and then building leg strength.
Alongside with that, you guys have talked about creatine a little bit.
Yeah.
We've changed on that a little bit.
Yeah, we did internet is interesting, right? So if something comes up and then you see all these influencers talking about it. And so I basically just contacted the PI of the study at Kansas University. I was like, I really need to talk to you to get a better understanding of what's going on. And when you look at the data, it was essentially a feasibility study. It wasn't a clinical trial per se.
Yeah.
It's a really good signal. It seems that creatine is getting into the brain. It seems that it might impact cognition. But is it something that we should talk about it as a public health advocate? We're not there yet.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I loved the way this is their paper.
Right.
Everybody else is going crazy with their paper, but it's their paper and their ability to stay circumspect, to be calm, and to say what this paper was
And what
just
it wasn't.
Joyful.
unbelievable. Joyful.
But it's not an isolated incident. I
Yeah.
think that most of the circumstances in which a paper comes out showing positive signal and it blows up on social media, if you actually go to the person,
Yes.
the PI that
Yeah.
did the research, it'd probably be like, hey, it shouldn't be blown out of proportion like
Yes.
it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the registered dietitian, who's now an associate professor, and the PI of the study says. We're going to be very cautious with how this is interpreted in the communities.
But for muscle, yes. There's no question of that now. There's plenty of studies that show that creatine is good for building muscle.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. The idea of social engagement or social isolation on the flip side, and sense of meaning in life, I think those are softer and a little more difficult to grasp, but they have a signal here, and that's something that's modifiable, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of what we're doing actually. So purpose is not. So I know that in people's mind it might be, oh, it's related to depression. It's not. It's an independent. Of course, there's no complete independence, but there's a different component to this. It's about how it's engaging your brain. Even concepts like creativity are not soft concepts. It's about how much your brain is able to engage with its environment, but not in the way that the brain gets narrower and narrower as we get older, but actually engages widely. So the larger networks of the brain are keeping engaged. Purpose does that. Creativity does that. Creativity is a separate thing, so let's keep to the purpose. Purpose keeps you engaged in deeper, more meaningful, and broader ways. And that's actually comes to speak to this brain resilience and what is Dr. Jakob's term?
Cognitive
reserve. Yeah, we spoke
Jakob
with
Stern.
Jakob Stern. So he's the father of cognitive reserve, and it speaks to that. Independent of depression or absence thereof, independent of anything else, it's how people are keeping engaged with life, which keeps those neurons connected. And this connections of the networks, not so there are two levels of connection. The neurons themselves and networks of connections is a real thing, and that's with purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are all things that we talk about people that are having symptoms doing to prevent any further symptomatology or progression. What about, you guys have spoken about things that are applicable to, 35-year-olds, for example. I'm 35.
As of yesterday.
As of yesterday.
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
Yes, I hate it when people wish me.
Oh, sorry.
But I'd like to think I'm not having many symptoms related to dementia, but I'd like to do some things. I'd like to do some things to prevent it. What's something that I can do today, would you say?
Yeah, I think brain health is a concept that we should all think about as soon as we hit our 20s. Unfortunately, we feel like we're invincible. Like I have a 20-year-old son, and if I talk to him about brain health, he's like, come on. But it's those risk factors that start accumulating. If we widen the spectrum of brain health to, our youth and as a continuous thing for us to take care of, I think that would be better. Then that's one of the things that Dean and I are doing in our conversations, to say it's not a point where you say, oh, good, not good, or healthy, not healthy. It's something that continuously changes. And so in your 30s, my goodness, exercise, or focusing on building habits that you carry with you throughout your life. And that's good sleep, keeping your mind active with something that you absolutely are interested in and you love, whether it's podcasting, whether it's reading books or learning new languages, or being involved in something that challenges you. And it's complex enough where it kind of keeps you on that edge. Keeping an eye on your LDL, keeping an eye on your blood pressure, keeping an eye on your insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, all of that matters. So I don't think this actually starts at a particular age. This is a continuum that starts very early in life and continues.
I love that. I love that. I would like to approach it a little differently. So for 30-year-olds, I'm going to make it even less popular. It's not about what to do. It's about what not to do. So, yeah, you're driven. I can't drive you anymore. I guarantee you exercise like crazy. I guarantee you that you try to sleep better. You do mental activities and your brain health and neuro and all that stuff. So
He's cold reading you right now.
yes.
Yeah.
The thing that's difficult with younger people is getting them not to not to do the things that they're not supposed to do. And that's difficult. So I look at the brain as, imagine a mega, what is it, these gigafactories, these huge, let's say 200 acres with pillars. And as you're getting older, you're building the pillars and then connections and building trusses and they're supporting each other. And it's an incredible building. But what happens is about certain things that can happen. You play sports. I have a syndrome. I lived in Pittsburgh. I'm too small, too slow, and too dumb to know it. And I played football, so broke my back. So I needed back surgery, and then all these things. And so some stupid things we do when you were younger. The way you eat, the lack of sleep, alcohol, marijuana for some people, especially when they're younger, and all these. These things are not inconsequential. How do you convince a young person not to drink? They'll find the data and they'll cajole it in a way that it will fit them, and they're sharp enough to do it. How do you tell them that marijuana? And I'm on the liberal side of things, and when it comes to marijuana, it's like we should have studied it. Why do we stop studying it? It shouldn't be illegal. It should be illegal, but then the data should be there to tell the people that people, it increases risk of this and that and memory and all of that stuff. So how do you convince young people to take care of those things as well? Because these pillars are knocked down early on. You won't see the effect because this peripheral part of the building fell down. You didn't care. You're in the center. Only you find out till the falling starts around you. But it's falling there. And that matters because that is also a support to everything else. So what I tell people is if you're really motivated for your brain health, do both sides. What to do and what not to do. And it's not an all or none. First you have to believe in that. That's it. Don't believe me. Believe the data. Don't buy anything from me. Second of all is do the steps in a systematic way. I'm a big checklist manifesto guy. I was Stephen Covey lists person before he even wrote it. So lists and lists.
That was his first gift for me when we first got married.
We had whiteboards in every room.
When we were dating, his first gift was Stephen Covey's Seven Habits.
But then lists and lists and lists. Make lists of stressors, positive stress, negative stress. There is such a thing, but in a measurable way. Because if it's not measurable, it's not changeable. What are the positive things in your life? What are the negative things in your life? It's okay. Less them, increase these, reduce these over time. These are the negative things in your life as far as, I drink a little, I do this. That's fine. It's okay. There's no judgment. I don't believe in judgment. And if I'm deterministic, I don't believe. So it's no judgment. Just list them. But be honest with all of it because all of it do affect you. Sometimes without you knowing significantly and consequentially. So the things you're going to increase, exercising more, reading more, playing music if you have to, all these things that build the brain, eating healthier, more plant predominant. You don't have to go vegan, more plants, less ultra processed. So we know these things. Be aware of your B12, be aware of your omega-3 and all of this. And at the same time, these things that when you're younger, you're not gonna, it's very difficult to convince young people, but they have an effect. So that's what I'm worried about the young people. Motivation, they're hyper motivated. In fact, they're too motivated. There's nothing I could tell you to motivate you any more than you are right now. You're doing a podcast in the middle of your practice, in the middle of a day, middle of the week. Doesn't get more motivated than that.
That's pretty motivated. That's a good way to look at it. You mentioned you're liberal, and you mentioned
no, I didn't.
You have liberal tendencies.
I have all different directions, but with certain things I have this, like for marijuana, for example. Don't say you're liberal. I'm gonna have people after me. I have belief systems when it comes to like marijuana stuff like that. We inappropriately demonize things.
What about psychedelics?
inappropriately demonized it, but
You
we
think
should
so?
study it. Of course we should study
Definitely
it.
should be
I
studied.
actually want to try it because as a neurologist, I've never been altered. I'm never interested in being drunk, but I would love to know what that feeling is.
Yeah.
I'm not shy about that. If anybody holds that against me, they're like, they're not curious enough. My number one value is curiosity. You have to be curious enough to know what is this altered feeling.
Yeah.
And especially with the data that's coming out with related to depression, I think that was
PTSD too.
that was fascinating.
The MDMA for PTSD
yeah,
was striking.
absolutely.
It's
It's
striking.
fascinating.
Yeah. And I'm one that never believes these data that's way out there. That's a major signal we better pay attention
We
to.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about supplements that you would recommend for anybody? We live in a age of supplements. Certainly, there might be a supplement out there that you think might be beneficial. You mentioned omega-3.
Again, just being very, very evidence-based. We know that vitamin B12 and B vitamins are important, and people who are deficient in B vitamins tend to have symptoms of cognitive decline. So at least once a year, everybody should check their B vitamins. We know from some of the preliminary data, I think there was a paper published a couple of months ago that showed that vitamin D deficiency could be associated with cognitive decline, which is right there.
It's right there.
And omega-3 fatty acids are incredibly important too. Dr. Hossein Yassin at USC is studying that, and he's doing some clinical trials. And
We did 2 reviews on that.
we did two
massive
systematic reviews, and we see some trend. We don't have definitive answers as to how much one should continue to take it, but it is an important thing to consider because the brain, is composed of DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, and deficiencies could result in some cognitive impairment. So for people who are not eating, fatty fish or they're not getting their alpha-linolenic acid, they should supplement.
Yeah.
Beyond that, from the studies, they really don't have any convincing evidence that taking any other type of micronutrients is important.
You do know that you just destroyed our supplement business.
If we had one,
it's
gone.
It's gone.
Finished.
Yeah.
And all of these micronutrients, whether it's vitamin C or vitamin E or other vitamins, are best consumed in food rather than pills.
Yeah. Now, it's not a micronutrient, but certainly that leads me to think about hormone replacement therapy. Testosterone deficiency might be associated with cognitive impairment.
Yeah.
And women, right? Hormone replacement for women.
Yeah. So
What does this look like?
I'm so happy that we're actually doing a lot of research and we have more data. Lisa Mosconi from Cornell is doing incredible research, and her studies and her data and some other studies have shown that it is important to consider hormone replacement therapy as women go through perimenopause and menopause. Timing is incredibly important, so it shouldn't be done when menopause, at the onset of menopause. It should be done actually earlier. So again, awareness, having conversations with an OBGYN or a women's health specialist around perimenopause is important.
She gave a talk at Mayo on the fact that it starts affecting the brain. The effect of, first of all, hormones, female hormones on the brain, and then its consequences on shrinking the brain and affecting the brain. So it's a very important topic that we're beginning to learn.
Yeah.
And
of how this estrogen receptors are actually in the brain and how it impacts the synapses and the inflammatory changes that happen in it. Fascinating information coming out.
Yeah. But there's been a movement, especially with middle-aged men, for testosterone replacement therapy. And I think a rationale for doing that has been, issues with longevity relating to testosterone deficiency, which seems to be defined a number of different ways these days.
With testosterone, I'm still a little. The data needs to be better elucidated, to be honest. I mean, of course, there's some data that shows, but I think it needs to be better elucidated. But it's the popular. It's the popular thing nowadays. Yeah.
I find it. So there are these terms that kind of become a little bit of a red flag, like when longevity is attached to a word, right? That
Or
that
mitochondrial.
just or mitochondria or detox.
Yeah. Or
You know,
detox,
you're
yeah.
like. So with that, I think you're right. We don't have enough data to
At this
make a
point.
very strong statement.
Yeah.
This is where we're going to hum and haw and say, I don't know.
Yeah. Now, looking up at this, risk factors, right? What was it, 2020 to 2024, they added 2 risk factors.
Yeah.
Over the next 10 years, are you clued in, or do you have any suspicions as to some other risk factors that we don't really realize right now that might be added to that list?
Yeah. I think for women, definitely perimenopause and menopause and hormone replacement therapy would probably be added with the data that is coming in.
I think, I don't know how, but attention and focus, and however that's going to be interpreted in a social setting, maybe not in the next couple of years, is going to be a factor. And now that's extrapolation. That's now we're going to conjectures. But I say focus, attention, focus, concentration, flow, all the different layers. It's the gatekeeper of consciousness, right? I say that if you're not coming to the point of focus and attention, you're not even conscious. So, and it's critically important. And there's a huge population generation that's going through a process where our attention is being usurped and being taken to the superficial level, maybe strategically, because there you can then you can
nudge.
Attention is a commodity now.
It is, and I think it's going to be consequential, because there is no memory if there's no attention, especially if sustained. The low attention. There's no executive function if there's no attention, especially if sustained low attention. I don't know how that will be studied. I don't know how it will be met, but at least mechanistically, and that's where we first start. And this is hypotheses. Take it for that. So not anything actionable. But I think that's an important factor that's going to affect us, at least from my perspective. It's a hypothesis that should be studied quickly.
I'm going to add another one that's not as sexy as what you just stated.
No.
That was very
kind
sexy.
of boring. That was very
I thought
sexy.
that was sexy.
Yeah. But sleep apnea.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a huge, it's a vascular risk factor, and so many people have it and nobody talks to them. And we know that when people have sleep apnea, that can impact cardiovascular system, but also the brain as well, especially when you have your O2 saturations dip down to your 80s and that's crazy. So maybe one of that.
I agree with you. I mean, and the ubiquity of sleep apnea. People think it's just has to do with being overweight or snoring. It's not. So if here's the thing, if you're sleeping 8 hours a day at night and you're still tired during the day, it's a signal to get evaluated. Not necessarily sleep apnea. Talk to a doctor to find out why. Because the whole point of that 8 hours is that it's giving you enough rest. You're going through enough cycles, 4 or 5 of those cycles, that you're resting. And so it could be something else. It could be anemia. It could be, thyroid disorder. It could be something else. But often we find that sleep apnea is the culprit.
Yeah, and often people think that because you're overweight or you're experiencing obesity, you should have sleep apnea. Sleep apnea can actually happen to people who are quite fit too, they should be checked.
Anything else to add or ask about?
Well, I'm curious just about how people should find out more about you guys, other resources for brain health in general. Where would you point people?
I think they should come to our altar and just listen to whatever we say. And no, I'm just kidding.
Bow down.
So scary. I just got
you did a pretty good job of that. That was scary. How good of a job.
We have these. We're the brain docs on social media.
We made it easy for people. Just,
the brain docs.
The brain docs.
And then podcast, Your Brain On. We have some incredible people on Your Brain On. And then we have lots of other stuff. We're doing a retreat coming up, and we have communities, online communities, and you can say better.
So our website is thebraindocs.com, and I would invite people to look at some of the community efforts that we're doing at healthymindsinitiative.org, healthymindsinitiative.org. This is essentially the brain health projects that we're doing in Southeast LA,
but it's going to grow
in Black and Brown communities, and it's actually growing nationally as well. It is one of the most amazing projects because the people there are essentially becoming brain health ambassadors, and they're taking this information and opportunity to spread the message of hope about brain health.
Yeah, it's all. We're starting with the African American churches, but it's going to grow wider than that. So if there are communities that want to be part of this, and the beauty of this is it's being built around 2 pillars which we think are fundamental today: community and technology. So we're very excited about that.
Amazing.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, sure.
So we usually end with a 3, 2, 1 closer. It's a little bit of a summary of things we've talked about, maybe something we haven't talked about, but 3 things that are true about dementia, 2 myths about dementia, and 1 thing anyone can do today to help themselves cognitively.
Amazing. So you want to do the 3 things, or Or should we just divide it?
each-
We'll
three
do it
things
together.
Are
yeah,
true.
Sure, true. The one thing that's true about dementia, that it is a massive epidemic that's represented, under-recorded in communities and a lot of communities. And it must be recognized early enough. I'm not going to get too much detail because it has consequences to the families. The second truth about dementia is that it is a great number of it, a percentage of it is reversible, preventable, not reversible, preventable, and if it's especially if detected early enough. And the third truth is that the power of the community to make a difference in their own health is immense. In fact, all prevention happens in the communities, not in the clinics. Clinics have amazing important place. It's treatment of disease. Prevention happens in the communities.
2 myths.
Yeah.
That when you grow old, you're going to have dementia. That is not true. There are a lot of people who actually are successful cognitive agers, that they live a long and healthy life without having a memory problem. And the second biggest myth is that dementia basically means that you lose your memories. Dementia can have many different faces. Sometimes it could be a behavioral change. Sometimes it could actually be even a physical change. So make sure that you always speak with a physician if you see some signs that are not making any sense on a loved one.
And the one thing that you should do, we can both do with this one.
Yeah.
We have this acronym, self-serving acronym, NEURO. N for nutrition, E for exercise, U for unwind, because we had to figure out what you would, how to pick stress management. R for restorative sleep, not just sleep, but restorative sleep. And O for optimizing mental and social activity. What you should do is what you need to do, where you can first make the most difference in your life. If what's possible for you. If you're not exercising, that's where you start. And why is exercise the most important? Because it's easy, it's measurable, it's consequential, and it's a stackable habit that everything else can stack on it. Sleep is tough. So if that's where you're starting, it's tough.
But doable.
But doable. All of them are doable. That's a good one. If you're already exercising, then nutrition. So I'll start there.
Yeah, and for nutrition, we have the MIND diet, the Mediterranean diet. Then we have plenty of evidence from different universities that when people eat a healthy dietary pattern, not a superfood, a healthy dietary pattern, they actually do well. As far as stress management and mental health is concerned, we know that when someone has anxiety or depression, if they don't change that, if they don't address that, forget about brain health in general. And then optimizing cognitive activity, we spoke about it, you spoke about it eloquently. It's keeping your mind active with something that is meaningful for you, that gives you meaning and purpose in life.
Yeah, incredible. Dr. Sherzai, a pleasure and honor.
Thank
you
you
for everything that you do. Thank you for bringing amazing brain health information to people that need it most to hopefully alter their course.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for providing this amazing platform for propagating evidence-based neurology and neuroscience.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Appreciate you both.
Appreciate it.
Wow, that was fun.